Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Upkick MMA episode 360. I'm Brendan. All right, there was no UFC this weekend. There was no Bellator. There wasn't a whole lot of fighting going on. So we're going to do something different today. We are going to talk about this year in fouls. 2023, we're going to talk about some fouls that have happened and what it means for the sport in general. All right, if you like this kind of stuff, you like MMA, subscribe to the channel. That way you know the next videos coming out. I cover, fights 2 or 3 times a week, and this is unique for me. Like, I don't think I've ever done a video on something like this. So if you like this kind of stuff, let me know and I'll do more of it. All right, let's talk about them. So if you guys have been watching my videos for the past 6 months, 5 months really, I've been keeping track of fouls in fights. Whether or not they've ended the fight does not matter. I've been keeping track of fouls for my own personal reasons. I just wanted to get some data on it to see kind of what happened. And I got some interesting results. It's not exactly what I thought, but it falls along the line. So this year, okay, so I started July 22nd is the fight card that I started on. Before that, we had a fight that was actually it was decided via eye poke. It was a no contest, not a DQ, a no contest. So the fouls that I keep track of are low blows, fence grabs, eye pokes, knee to the head of a grounded opponent or kicking the head of the grounded opponent. Hitting to the back of the head, we'll talk about that one when I get to it. Grabbing inside the glove, right? You are not allowed to grab the inside of your opponent's glove like so. And headbutts, again, we'll talk about them when I get to them. The 3 big ones, the ones that happen all the time: low blows, fence grab, eye poke, all the time. And they're by far the leading fouls, and low blows especially. So one of the things that I was interested in was just outright numbers. How many fouls happen in a year? So I'm sorry, more setup, because the numbers are actually going to be less than what they actually would be. I didn't count every single foul that happened. It can only go up by 1, right? The counter can only go up by 1 in one category per fight. Okay, so if both guys kick each other in the nuts, they cancel each other out. Okay, if one does an eye poke and one does a low blow, it cancels out, right? Basically, like, the idea is, like, foul for foul, they should both be punished. That's my take from it. Is if there would be a point deduction in one person's favor in a fight, that's when we would record it. So in fact, I actually in some of the cases, the knee to the head of the grounded opponent, hitting to the back of the head, grabbing inside the glove, and a headbutt both all need to be called by the referee, whereas a low blow, fence grab, and eye poke we can watch on a replay. Because those other ones need to be called by a referee in the moment for them to be considered on my list. So, that being said, if there's 6 fouls in a fight, it's only going to count for 1 in one category. And if one person commits multiple fouls, which does happen, I pick the one that affected the fight the most, right? So if it was a really bad fence grab, stopping a takedown, that's what I'm going to record. If it's a really bad low blow, that made a guy, huddle over in pain for 2 rounds, that's gonna take the cake. If it's a really bad eye poke, same thing. So we'll start with the most common foul that we saw here. Right. So of the fights that I started recording, there were 24 net low blows. 24 in 5 months. And of those 24, the 17 of those were won by the person who committed the low blow. Right? 9 finishes, 9 wins by decision, 8 wins by finish. Okay? When the person who received the foul won, they won 5 by decision and 2 by finish, right? So if it could be a coincidence, it could be, correlation does not mean causation, right? I didn't go back and watch each one of these to say that this caused a win. It's also very hard to ascribe a win from a foul, depending on how the fight goes. Sometimes it's super easy, right? If you poke a guy in one of his eyes and then he can't see, like, let's say he can't see out of his right eye anymore, and the rest of the fight he keeps getting hit by your left hook, okay, we can say that there's a strong correlation here. There could be some causation as to why, you won that fight or he lost that fight. In some cases, it's not. It might be an incidental low blow, but it's still a low blow. And it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to ascribe a win to it. But 70.8% of the time, the person who committed the foul ended up winning. Right? That's not an insignificant number. And here's my one of my points. There was 1 point deduction via foul. 1. In the past 5 months, there was 1, and it was from a low blow. And I remember the fight. I believe it was over in the Middle East. It was the one in Abu Dhabi, and the guy got kicked repeatedly in the nuts, and he had to be carried out. He got an X-ray on his testicles to make sure that they weren't permanently damaged. It was pretty bad. It was a very that card lacked discipline. The South Park pick. You lack a discipline. But that's the problem when you start getting into you start looking at these total numbers. And like I said, 24 this is 24 net fouls, right? This is not 24 total. There were more nut kicks. There were more low blows in this time frame. But even with that, there was only 1 point deduction. One point deduction. None of these other fouls that we're going to go through received a point deduction in this time period. There was another DQ, but not for low blows. So, I'll get to my conclusions at the end for what this means in total and what I would like to see. But to sum up low blows, I think that they do affect the fight more than what people give them. Right? We often gloss over them because they are so common. Like I said, there were 24 net fouls in the past 5 months, and they happen not I would say almost ubiquitously across all cards. There's going to be a low blow. Although on this last card there were very few fouls, which was kind of nice. So because the low blow is so common, we often look over it and we don't say that it caused the win, but often it can. Imagine getting kicked in the nether regions, and then feeling that damage, right? You feel it in your stomach, and then imagine getting punched in the stomach. You're not going to tell me that didn't affect how that next punch felt or the next kick to the stomach felt. So I think that it obviously does put an effect on the fight. And does it mean that you're going to automatically win? No, but it means the biggest takeaway from this is who cares? I've said this. I've been saying this for years. Just commit fouls. Be loose with your technique. Don't be in control of your weapons. Who gives a crap? You're not going to get punished for it. You might lose position. I didn't keep track of that. You might lose position, which does happen, but how much of a punishment is that really? Especially when most of the time that doesn't even happen. Okay. That is it for low blows. All right. I like I said, I do think they affect. So next, the next most common, with 8 total fouls, or 8 total net fouls, fence grabs. Okay. This one, of those 8 fights with a net foul, the fouler won 5 of those fights. Right. Not the largest sample size for this one. Fowler by decision 4 times, Fowler by finish once. The person who, on the other end, the person who, they're not directly fouled, so that's not the same as getting kicked, but the person who was on the other end of this won twice, and then by decision, and won once by finish. So this adds up to 62.5% of the time the person who commits a fence grab and gets, actually punished for it, right? Not just like hand slapped away, like something like they are warned multiple times. It's not just an incidental one. They end up winning. Fence grabs are pretty bad. Okay. This doesn't directly affect your opponent the same way an eye poke, a low blow, or a knee to the head would, but this affects position. And as we know in MMA, one of the biggest things we've heard it 100 times. One of the biggest things you can do is control position. And how do you do that with, your wrestling, right? We often hear that wrestling is the best base. Joe Rogan espouses it. A lot of fighters do, and for good reason. Wrestling allows you to dictate where the fight takes place. If you would like it to be on the ground, you can get it there. If you'd like to stay on your feet, you can stop it from getting there. And if you're an excellent wrestler and you go to take someone down and they back up to the fence and then you lift them up and they hold on to the fence and stop themselves from being taken down, what would have happened? See, this is where we get into the what if game of, what if he did get taken down? What if that was a slam? What if he was able to sweep, on the ground if you hold the fence when you're even on top? What if you were able to reverse position along the fence? Because sometimes when people push their opponent to the fence and they're in the clinch and they're in the dominant position, they'll hold on to the fence and suck themselves in to stop their opponent from getting off the fence. So you get into this what if game. How does this affect the fight? How would this have affected the fight? Would this have been the difference maker? Think about it. If the wrestler is able to control an entire round in the first round, and in the second round goes for a takedown, the takedown is stopped by a fence grab, how did that affect the fight? Was it going to stay on the ground the entire round again? We don't know, but all the evidence showed from the first round that yes, that would have. And what happens if that round goes the other person's direction? And now the wrestler is super tired in the third round, and you can come up with whatever excuse or reasoning or whatever justification you want. Like, he should have the cardio. I agree, he should have the cardio. He can't be so one-dimensional. Like, okay, fine, you can say all those things, but it boils down to he was fighting within the rule set and the other person wasn't. They were cheating. They cheated, and there were no point deductions for fence grabs. There were multiple fence grabs, and just like I said, it was 8 net fence grabs, right? There could have been multiple fence grabs in a fight. In fact, there often are, and it's unfortunate that we see this because it's not punished harshly enough. It should be immediate. There should be, if someone grabs a fence, they immediately lose position, right? If they were off their feet or looked like they could be taken down, boom, right on the ground. If they're holding the guy against the fence in the clinch, boom, away from the fence. You don't have that clinch anymore. If you prevented a sweep on the ground by holding onto the fence and staying in top position, boom, swept. You're on the bottom, or maybe you just stand them back up. Right? Just stand them back up. If someone grabs a fence, like, there should be an immediate positional change. There should be no questions. There should be no hand slap. No, that's bullshit. That's one I hate the most. Someone comes over and slaps the hand. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't slap the hand. It should be immediate. And then if you're not going to take position, take a point. Just tell them, nope, point. Maybe you don't even have to do a reset. Just at the end of the round, you go and take a point for every time they grab the fence. You can warn them. You can tell them, like, hey, you're grabbing the fence. Just know that's going to be a point deduction. So there's a bunch of different ways they can tackle this. I like the positional change immediately. I think that's often punishment enough, because that's what they were doing by grabbing the fence. They were preventing the positional change. So I'd be okay with that. Still, less than half as common as the low blow, though, being the net foul of a fight. Next, we are going to talk about eye pokes. One that one can happen more often, but this time 7 total net eye pokes over the past 5 months. And with those 7, the person who had the net eye poke, right? So if we both poke each other, but then I poke you an additional time, I got the net eye poke, right? So I was the beneficiary of the eye pokes. And when that's the case, the person who was the beneficiary won 4 times out of 7, so 57.1%. 3 times by decision, 1 time by finish. When being eye poked, that person won twice by decision and once by finish. So again, not the largest sample size, almost as the same amount as fence grabs. Not as definitive either, because again, I think eye pokes are actually more similar to low blows because they affect the opponent, right, in a way that we because they're so common, we just often brush off. Once they take their 2 minutes or 1 minute or 30 seconds sometimes or no time, we just immediately forget about it, and we don't count it as affecting the fight, unless maybe it's someone like DC who's fighting, and your friend John Anik is in the commentary booth or commentary table, and they are talking about how being eye poked is real hard to come back from, and it's affecting the fight because when your friend gets eye poked, that's when you talk about it. So it's usually just brushed off. It's not talked about. There was a fight this year, before I started documenting the stuff, that got canceled. I think it was, I wrote it down, Austin Lane versus Justin Tafa, that they ended up rematching. This was actually, so it was right before I started documenting this stuff. So the eye poke was so bad that they had to just end the fight right there. So this does happen a lot, and again, like I said in the opening to this, I did describe, like, if I poke you repeatedly in your right eye, and then you're having problems seeing out of it, and I start attacking that side with hooks, where this leaves your field of view of your left eye, right? This will leave the field of view of your left eye, and then bam, come in. So you never see it coming, or by the time you do see it coming, it's too late. So it's also, like, we saw this happen with Bisping. Bisping's a great example with his fake eye, not being able to see out of it. And, we saw he was exposed by Georges St. Pierre, by Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, lots of people during his career, but that was the great example of what can happen. Because an eye poke can do the exact same thing. It can make your vision blurry. It could even make you go blind in one eye for the remainder of the fight. I think that eye pokes are an instant punishment. Again, I think eye pokes, because it doesn't change position, I think an eye poke is just instant, just a point deduction immediately. Because how are you supposed to gauge how bad that eye poke? Because now what you're doing, so what can happen is, if it does affect that other fighter quite a bit, and they play, like, they can judge that. They can say, oh, look how bad that eye poke was. I have to make it even by taking a point. So now what you're doing is you're advocating for people to play up their injuries, which isn't what we want to see. We just want to see things be judged fairly, the same, consistently across all fights. Eye poke, point deduction. Fence grab, positional change. Low blow, point deduction. That's what it is. So I'd be a huge fan of that. In this 5-month period, I did not see any knees to the head of a grounded opponent or kicks to the head of a grounded opponent. Back of the head. This was an interesting one. So, to the back of the head, someone was warned. Like, there's plenty of times where they get warned for it. I didn't count this one unless the fight was paused by it, because in the moment, what can happen, especially like someone like Mark Smith will say, watch the back of the head, right? Make sure they say catch the ear, meaning like your fist should touch the ear. If it touches the ear, it's clearly not behind the head. So it was hard to say that this happened a lot. There were 2 net times that this happened in the past 5 months. Of that, it was one time that person won by finish, and one time it was a DQ, giving the person who got fouled a decision win. So, and that one was bad. To put it in perspective, he was warned like 4 or 5 times about striking to the back of the head, and because of that, he repeatedly. He didn't repeatedly. He was repeatedly warned, and he didn't have to give up his position. He was on his back and punching straight instead of hooks. He was punching straight, punch into the back. It was Malkoon. Yeah, that's who it was. Punch into the back of the head. And, he was dominating the fight, and I feel for the guy in a way because he was destroying him. But the problem is, he could have easily changed his technique up and not had that foul happen. So, punches to the back of the head, I think that they do not get counted enough. They should be counted a lot more, and they should be a lot more strict about it. I know that you say like in transition, but if you're on the ground and the person punching you has control of the fight, there should never be a fight-ending sequence where your ears are completely covered up, right? And you're shielding your ears. and that other person who's punching you isn't even touching your gloves, which means those punches are going to the back of your head. There should never be a fighting ending sequence that includes multiple punches to the back of the head. It should be a point deduction immediately, and then give the position away. I don't care how close you were to finishing it. It doesn't mean you get to break the rules. If the guy's really hurt, does that mean you get to run in and kick him in the nuts? No, it doesn't. So immediate point deduction, positional change, and I'm sick of it. Like, you can't either get rid of the rule and say you can hit to the back of the head, which I've heard advocates for, or enforce it. You have to say, like, the second one of those straight punch, they don't get a warning. You don't get a warning for a low blow. You don't get a warning for an eye poke. Right? Why do you get a warning for punching to the back of the head? It affects your opponent directly, right? A fence grab, I understand why that they give it a warning or they slap their hand away, because it's not directly damaging your opponent. So, okay, but punches to the back of the head are just as bad as knees to the head of a grounded opponent. You're not allowed to hit that area. So it should be an instant one. Oh, but he's ducking his head under. Where am I supposed to the body? I don't care. Doesn't matter. If he covers up really well, again, are you just going to kick him in the nuts? No, you're not, because that's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. So fight within the rule set and quit bitching about it and enforce the damn stuff. Grabs inside the gloves. Again, only 2 of them in the past 5 months that I counted that were net. One time it got the person the win by the decision. One time that person got finished. It does happen. Sometimes it's incidental, but it does affect position. We saw a championship change hands because of that. Not change hands. A championship won by Charles Oliveira doing that to Dustin Poirier, right? It affected the fight. You can't tell me that glove grab didn't affect the fight. You know, it caused Poirier not to be able to stand up, put him off balance, and then Oliveira dominated the rest of the round, and Poirier was tired for the next round. Does it get back to the ground? Maybe. Does Oliveira get finished in that round? Maybe. There's no way to know. You can't tell me because that didn't happen. So, again, grabbing the gloves, instant positional change. Stand up. Stand up. You like, it's not like, oh, he's grabbing the inside of my glove. Okay, well, take it out and then keep him in that position. No, I don't care. Stop doing it. Oh, well, it was accidental. Fine. Put your fingers in a different spot. I mean, sometimes it happens and it sucks, but those are the rules. Like, you don't always intend to kick him in the nuts. You don't always intend to poke him in the eye, but the rules are there for a reason. So either again, like, punishment or get rid of the rule. Let him grab inside the gloves. And then the last one I wrote down here was headbutts. So again, only 2 of them that were recorded. Fowler won by finish one time, and then the fouled by finish. So for headbutts, again, it had to be a stop due to the headbutt. Like, you had to separate and give them time for the headbutt. That had to happen. And then as far as who got the benefit of it, it was who initiated the movement that caused the headbutt, right? So if someone rushed in with their head down and pushed into someone else's chin, they were the initiator. If someone was moving in like a normal, for a normal attack, they're moving in maybe to go for a clinch, and the other person lowered their head and put without lowering level, right? They just lowered their head and then that caused the headbutt. That would be on them. Sometimes it's they knock that, like they hit heads almost the same position, and nobody really takes the brunt of it or the worst of it. So because of that, a lot of those headbutts end up getting canceled out. And even then, like I said, I really only counted it when it was a pause in the action. All right, that is all of the fouls that I recorded. Now, I actually would like to know what you guys think. Am I too hard on fouls? Do you guys like the system that we have now? Do you think it's fair? Do you think that it makes sense? I'm not talking about the fouls that we have, right? Not the 12-6 elbow, not the fence grab. I'm not talking about like individual fouls being in place. I'm just saying, as a whole, does this system work? Do you think that our fouling system works, right? That MMA's foul structure and the way that is enforced, do you think it's a net good or a net bad? Right, and I will continue to keep track of this stuff. I will start a new list for next year, and maybe I'll put some more details in it as the fights go by to kind of refer back to them, so I can talk about them again at the end of the year if you guys like this kind of stuff. My takeaway, it's pretty obvious. I say it a lot. It's too loose. They're not enforced enough, and it's subjective. The knees to the head of a grounded opponent, so specifically this year, caused a belt not to change hands, and Alexa Grasso is still champion, regardless of that 10-8 round, that errant 10-8 round, which was bullcrap. Valentina Shevchenko got kneed in the head multiple times while her hand was down, and they said, "Oh, well, you can't do that. It has to be a weight-bearing hand." Meanwhile, we had fights 2 weekends later where the exact same thing happened, and the guy got a pause in action. Because it was, oh, well, his fingers were down. But it wasn't weight-bearing. And I know what you're saying. Some places have the unified rules and some places don't. These both had the same rule set. So I don't want to hear it. Either enforce it the same, change the rule, or get rid of it. And things need to be enforced. It's actually causing problems in title shots. It's happened before. Okay, and not only that, when your pay is determined by a win or a loss, and not just your, like, obviously, like, your implied pay by moving on in the division, ranking up, the possibility to become champion, all that. I'm talking about your immediate pay, right? This fight, I only make half of my money. I only make half of my money if I get a win. You just took that away from me by not taking point. The guy kicked me in the nuts 6 times. You didn't take a single point. Right now, I know that's a stupid example, because like at 6 kicks, you would figure it would be a point deduction. But we've seen a low blow, a fence grab, an eye poke, and hit to the back of the head, all in the same fight from the same individual. And as long as you commit different fouls every time, you don't get a point deduction. Now, how does that make sense? It doesn't. Okay. So this is my little summary on what I've been keeping track of. I figured I'd make a video on it while we're in a little pause from the UFC. Let me know what you guys thought. I appreciate y'all for stopping by. It means a lot to me. Tomorrow is Christmas, so enjoy your time with your family. Enjoy your time with your loved ones, people that you spend time with. I hope you guys, even if you have to work, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope you have a great week. Subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of stuff. That way, in the next video is coming out. I appreciate y'all for stopping by. Love you guys. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.